The second section is brought to you by Virtual REI Academy, which is an online, all-in-one real estate investing hub where you learn from the experts with single family houses that are from actually practitioners that are actually not only teaching, but actively investing. And it's an easy access platform. And we're always adding new courses and more content. And I think Jane's going to put the link in the chat as well. And without further ado, Larissa, guess we can go to the second section of your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And so this section is really for those, this information can be used anywhere. So we're going to talk about annual contributions, when you can set up accounts, deadlines, and things of that nature. So like I said, if you're not ready to self-direct, but you just want to learn about retirement accounts, this is for you. Because these are going to be IRS guidelines that we're going to talk about now. And, you know, I really like this picture for this slide because it's so appropriate. I mean, here we are, you know, newly into 2024, but it's not too late to contribute for 2023. So we're sort of rolling into the new year, but we still have lots of opportunity to get tax deductions if we need it, to start an account, to make those contributions, or to do what I like to call lump funding your IRA account, because you have a unique opportunity right now to contribute both for 2023 and 2024. So if you're like, you know what, I do have an investment coming up, I have an investment in mind and I need $12,000. Well, if you have a Roth IRA, the contribution for 2023 is only $6,500, but you can make both 23 and 24's contribution if you haven't already done so, and then really make that investment in a timely manner because of the time of year that we're in. So it's really cool. So I posted this slide again, just so you guys would see it. Here's the types of plans again: Roth and traditional are the most common investment accounts that we hold. SEP, Simples, and solo 401ks are for the self-employed. And then, of course, health savings and education savings accounts. So let's look at contributions. Remember, I said that some of these accounts can absolutely work together. So you can have a SEP and a traditional IRA. You can have a SEP and a Roth. You can have a Roth, a SEP, and an HSA if you qualify for all of these. And you can make contributions to all of these as long as you had enough in earned income. There's only one account on this slide that you can make contributions to without earned income. Does anybody happen to know what account that is? The health savings account is going to be the only account that if you qualify for it, that's very important. If you qualify for it, you can have it and make contributions without earned income. And I know as investors, we don't always have what's considered earned income. A lot of it is passive. And so the health savings account could still be something you contribute to as long as you have qualified health coverage. And we'll talk about that when I get to HSAs. So plan contribution limits for traditional and Roth IRAs for 2023. And I'm going to focus today on 2023. But like I said, you can make your 2024 contributions. And so you have up until certain dates to make your 23, and that's why we're looking at those specifically. And then, of course, you have all year to make your 24 contributions. So traditional and Roth IRAs, you can still set up and fund Roth and traditional IRAs. They don't have to already be established, and you have up until April 15th. So that deadline, although it feels far out now, it's going to be fast approaching. Take it from me, because I often will open traditional and Roth IRAs on April 15th. So you can still do that, but don't wait, because checks lost in the mails, wires that don't go through, ACHs that don't clear, we don't get a second chance at those. So just keep that in mind, because it does happen, and it's so unfortunate, because I know we get busy. I know what that's like. I have 3 kids, so I'm with you there, but try not to wait, because if you do put the check in the mail and we don't receive it, that is a problem. So just keep that in mind. So for your traditional and Roth IRA, you can put in $6,500, $7,500 if you're over the age of 50. That is going to get bumped up, or did get bumped up, for 2024. And you do have until April 15th. Those accounts, by the way, are for individuals. So they're called IRAs because they're individual retirement arrangements. And so if you have earned income as an individual, you can have one of these 2 types of accounts. You can have both. You can only contribute to one or the other, or a combination of the 2, not to exceed the limit. That limit is per individual, not per account. SEP IRAs are for the self-employed individuals. Your SEP IRA is good for you, and you can have a SEP if you have employees, but you may have to include them. That's very important. You can have a SEP IRA if you're a sole proprietor. You do not have to have a formally established entity. So Larissa Greene, sole proprietor, can open a SEP IRA. The contribution is $66,000 or 25 up to 25% of compensation, the lesser of the two. That's super important. So if I had 100,000 in earnings and I'm a sole proprietor, I'm going to likely be able to max out at 20% or 20,000. But again, the good news here is that if I can contribute all 20,000 or 20% or 25%, I can still have a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA, an HSA, and all of these accounts can work together as long as I qualify and I have enough in earned income. I know a lot of people are going to ask, and we talked about updates to IRAs. So here is a little bit about that for now, and then we'll get into it again for the different types of accounts that will eventually be eligible. But with the Secure Act 2.0, they did make changes to the SEP IRA. You won't unfortunately see those changes just yet be implemented. So those changes are going to include contributions to the SEP as Roth. Right now, the SEP IRA is a pre-tax account. Secure Act 2.0 did update that so that you can accept Roth contributions. However, as administrators, we need the IRS to come back to us and give us information on how the record keeping for those accounts are going to be done. And until we have that clarification from the IRS, we cannot implement that. So right now, administrators as a whole, brokerage firms, we're all on hold until we get record keeping clarification. And then once the IRS hands that down, then everybody will be able to accept those Roth contributions. The good news, of course, is that you can make your contributions to your SEP and convert them to your Roth IRA, because a SEP IRA isn't going to require you to hold that money in the SEP for any certain amount of time. So you can actually put it into the SEP, max out your SEP, and do your Roth conversion, just remembering that you're going to pay taxes in the tax year that you do that. The simple IRA is a great account because you can put in an employee and an employer contribution. And so the SEP IRA, if we go back here, we're going to see that this is actually just an employer contribution. Okay. When you look at a simple IRA, you get both an employee and an employer contribution. And the reason that the simple IRA is sometimes ideal for individuals that are investors is because the employee contribution is considered the first of your compensation, meaning that instead of it being a formula based on your income, so if you only had, say, $10,000 this year in earned income as an investor, then it is going to only be 20 to 25% of that income. So the maximum you could put in your SEP IRA this year would maybe be $2,500. But if you had a simple IRA, because it's the first $15,500 of your earnings, if you had 20,000 in earnings, you might be able to put in all 15,500. Or if you only had 10,000 in earnings, you might be able to put close to that 10,000 into the simple IRA. And then you also get an employer contribution of between 1% and 3%, and that is going to depend on how you set up your simple IRA. Unfortunately, the simple IRA needed to be established by October 1st, 2023 to make 2023 contributions, but it is, of course, not too late to set up the simple and contribute for 2024. If you already have a simple IRA in existence since October 1st at least, then of course you can still make your employee and employer contributions, and you do have some time up to tax filing plus extension. So that's really important, because if that plan already exists, you have lots of time to make your contributions. And you know what? I did not mention that with the SEP, so I'm going to go back. The SEP IRA can still be established and contributed for 2023 up until tax filing plus extension. So that means you have, as a business, all the way up until October 15th to set up and contribute to your SEP IRA for 2023. So you have lots of time to decide if this account is right for you. So the simple IRA, again, unfortunately, its deadline has passed for 23 contributions if you do not have one established. But if you do, then you're all set. You can make your contribution, or you can still set up and fund for 24. Any questions so far? Okay, we'll go on to solo 401ks. This tends to be the most popular account, it seems, among investors for employer plans. And I think it's probably because of the flexibility of this plan and the contribution limits. Again, you can be a sole proprietor and still establish a solo 401k. You don't have to have a formally established entity. And the solo 401k is going to be similar to the simple IRA as far as how contributions work. You get both an employee and an employer contribution here. Your employee contribution is $22,500. And then you can also contribute as your own employer up to between 20 to 25% of your income. And it's going to also follow in line with the SEP. So it's kind of a mix of a SEP and a simple, where the contribution limit for 2023 is $66,000. Different than the other plans, it also has an employer catch-up. Excuse me, an employee catch-up for those over the age of 50. But this contribution, this employee contribution, can be Roth. So even though the SEP and the simple will eventually allow Roth contributions, once we get clarification from the IRS, the solo 401k already does allow Roth contributions. The employee contribution can be designated as Roth as long as your plan allows. So the solo 401k with Advanta, your plan will allow Roth contributions. If you have a plan outside of Advanta, please review your plan documents to see if your employee contribution can be Roth. If it can, then you can make that contribution designated as Roth immediately. If your plan allows, you can also do Roth in-plan Roth conversion. So once you put your employer contribution in, even though currently it has to go in pre-tax, it can be converted as long as your plan allows immediately to the Roth component. And so if you've ever heard of that term Roth solo 401k or Roth 401k, typically people are referring to the fact that not only do they make contributions that are designated as Roth, but any pre-tax money they immediately convert to the Roth component, making all of the monies in that 401k Roth money. The 401k also has a lot of flexibility, just like the other plans. And there are a lot of options as far as how much administration you want to do for the 401k versus how much you want to have Advanta do. So we can help you with record keeping. We can also help you with IRS reporting. But the most common plan with a 401k through Advanta is very simply checkbook control. The IRS will allow you to have checkbook control as your own administrator and trustee. And you can have a bank account in the name of the 401k where you not only make your contributions, but you also do your investing. So that is allowed. At some point, again, when we have clarification from the IRS, the employer contributions will also be allowed to go in designated as Roth. And again, that will be if and as long as your plan allows. So that will also be something that your plan will have to update and allow in the future. The 401k contributions again are going to be listed here, and then we also have the deadline. So for 2023, unfortunately, if you did not have the plan set up by December 31st, then you're going to be limited on the contributions you can make, but not all is lost. You'll still be able to make contributions to this plan for 2023. The one you lose is the employee contribution. So that $22,500 for 2023 would not be allowed if your plan was not established by December 31st. And actually that clarification came with the Secure Act 2.0 as well, because there was some question as to whether or not there was a specific deadline. But now we know that the plan has to be established by the 31st of that year in order to make the employee contribution. But then as long as the plan is established, you actually do have up until tax filing plus extensions to make the employee and employer contribution. So that gave us a lot of clarity there. And then if you did not establish your plan, but you would still like to establish a plan, you can open and fund for 2023 as the employer. So that 20 to 25% of compensation can still be done, not to exceed $66,000 for the employer's portion for 2023. And you can, of course, still make your 2024 contribution at any time this year and into next if you want to set up a solo 401k. An ESA is what I like to call it, or education savings account. You'll also hear them called Coverdell's or CISAs. It's all the same thing. It's an education savings account for children. They don't have to be your children. You can set up an account and contribute for somebody else's children, maybe your niece or your nephew, your cousin's children, whatever it might be. but the contribution is per child, not per person, making a contribution of $2,000 per child. And this is a really cool account because it has a lot of room for what you can use that money for. So you can put this money in, have it grow self-directed, and then you can take distributions from this account for things like private school and things needed for school, of course, higher education. And there's actually a list of things on our website and also on the IRS website that you can use distributions from this account for. And it acts like a Roth IRA where contributions go in without getting a deduction. But then when you have it grow, it grows tax deferred and it comes out tax free as long as it's for qualified education expenses. It's also a really cool account because it can move from child to child if you want to change the beneficiary. So for example, I have 3 children. If I contribute to an ESA for my son and he doesn't use that money, I can move the beneficiary to my daughter. And if she doesn't use that money or if there's leftover money, I can move it to the little one. And if the little one doesn't use that money, then I can move it to my nephew, to my cousin's children, whatever I want. There's a lot of flexibility on changing the beneficiary for this account. Actually, if you go to the IRS website, they really leave it open as far as who might be considered eligible for you to move this money for. So, definitely always check with your accountant before changing the beneficiary to make sure they feel that that is close enough related to do so, but there's a lot of wiggle room here. And so that just very simply means that you can continue to grow this account tax deferred and take distributions tax free for qualified education expenses. And you can still open and fund this account all the way up until April 15th of 24 or 2023. Health savings accounts. These are really growing in popularity, but you do have to have a qualifying healthcare plan in order to have an HSA. So that's really important because unfortunately, this is not a way to self-insure. So you do have to have a plan that says you can make contributions to an HSA in order to have it, and that's going to be super important. The plan did have to be set up by December 1st of 2023 in order to make 2023's contribution. So super important. If you already had a plan and it is a high deductible healthcare plan, check to make sure that the plan allows contributions to an HSA. And as long as it does, then you can self-direct to your HSA and make your contribution with Advanta. Your contribution limits are set up here. And as long as, again, that healthcare coverage was in place by December 1st, then you have all the way up until April 15th to make your 2023 contribution. You do have to maintain that coverage for a full 12 months. So it has to go from December 1st, 2023 to December 1st, 2024 in order to make the full 23 contribution. If at some point you cancel the plan, then you do have to be aware that it is a prorated contribution and you might have to take a distribution due to overcontribution if that happens. A health savings account is considered a triple tax advantage account. It's really cool because it goes in with a tax deduction. It grows tax deferred and it comes out tax free as long as those distributions are for qualified medical expenses. You also do not have to take those distributions at the time of the medical expense. You can save your receipt and take those distributions at some point in the future. So it has a lot of flexibility as well. And you can check out our website or irs.gov for a list of qualified medical expenses for that plan. Here's my contact information again, but I'm happy to stick around if anybody has questions for me. If anybody would like the slides, you can email me. I'm happy to share them with you. And also, I would encourage you to check out advantaira.com/events because we have a lot of great webinars coming up. And we are also archiving everything that we do to our YouTube channel. So search Advanta IRA on YouTube. And we have past webinars on things like unrelated business income tax, a whole webinar on that topic, private lending, limited partnerships. Those all have their own webinar on our YouTube channel and on our website that you can check out.
Thank you again, Larissa. We're up for questions. I'm sure, I mean, she's very, very knowledgeable in these accounts. And if you're thinking about getting one or have one and have questions, she's the perfect person to ask.
This is Nicole again. I have another question about changes to the rules for 2024. I think I understand that some of the Roth advantages that were before are being mitigated by limits of what you can contribute and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about some of the changes to traditionals and Roth in 2024?
So they did bump up the contribution limits, and other than that, there's not going to be a ton of changes. Something that you're going to see more specifically as far as the Roth contributions are going to be to like 401ks and employer plans. So for example, once you reach a certain age, they're going to require your catch-up contribution to go into the Roth portion of the employer plan. And they did also change that there won't be a required minimum distribution on the Roth portion of your employer plan. And so those are really going to be more plan specific versus like IRAs. But of course, I think almost every contribution limit did go up, get bumped up for inflation in 2024. So you're going to see those changes. Unfortunately, I think the only one that didn't get changed again this year is the education savings account, which keeps getting looked over as far as bump ups for contribution limits. And I think that's why it's still so low. But everything else, as far as the rules are concerned, are going to stay the same. Now, we do from time to time see laws pop up where they want to make some changes to self-directed IRAs, and so far nothing of that has come through. We do a lot of times see in election years, we'll see that stuff pop up again. But I think, for the most part, things will continue to go unchanged. But if we do see anything and you are on our email list, then you already know we will start letting people know that there is, something in the legislature that we need to be aware of. We need to write to our representatives. Actually, it was in 2021 where we had something pop up like that. And I know I self-direct my 401k. I like to do private lending. And so I was, among the people writing to my representatives, letting them know that I didn't like the changes, that they were going to affect how I handle my retirement savings with the control that I have. And so anytime there's changes where we want you to get involved and be aware, then we're definitely going to include you if you're on our email list.
I had, and I could definitely be wrong, but I had heard that there was going to be changes to the minimum distributions in Roth. So it used to be that you didn't have to distribute. And then there was some changes when there was a death, that in terms of the amount of time you had to distribute that.
Yes,
And
that's
I had
correct.
also heard that there was a limit to the tax advantage, that not everything was going to be, even if it was a Roth, was going to be tax free when you took money out, that there was going to be a limit.
So they did look at some of those, and some of that did drop off. And now all of the changes that you're talking about were part of the Secure Act 2.0. So that was at the end of 2020 for the Secure Act 2.0. And so changes in beneficiaries. So the stretch IRA, as they used to call it, is no more. Unfortunately, they did change that. You're right, Nicole. What they did was they said spousal beneficiaries are going to stay the same. So if something happened to me and my husband inherits my account, he can literally treat my account as his own. And so he does not have to take required minimum distributions from the time of my death, and that is normal. Unless, of course, he's required minimum distribution age and it is a traditional IRA. The other change is that beneficiaries used to take distributions over a lifetime. So if my children inherited my IRA, for example, then they would have the opportunity to have a calculation done where they could take distributions over a lifetime of that account. That used to be a beneficiary required minimum distribution. But with this Secure Act 2.0, or it might have been Secure Act actually, way back in 2019. Yes, it was the first Secure Act where they took away that ability. So non-spousal beneficiaries are they can inherit the IRA as it is, but they have 10 years to distribute that account. There's no required minimum distribution. In most cases, that's not always true. But in most cases, there's no required minimum distribution, but the account has to be distributed in its entirety after or up to that 10-year point. The reason I say not in all cases is because some trusts are going to take required minimum distributions if the IRA is inherited by a trust. children that are under the age of majority, depending on the state, those children are still going to take required minimum distributions. And so there's still going to be some cases where those distributions over time are going to apply. But in most cases, if you're a non-spousal beneficiary, you'll have 10 years to distribute that account in its entirety. The good news is you can still grow it tax deferred or tax free within that 10 years, but on year 10, you're going to distribute.
So I can still contribute to my Roth even if I'm, 74, 75.
Yes, but
Yeah,
you can
so
only
I can
contribute.
still, and I don't have to take distributions if I don't want to.
No, not from a Roth. The traditional IRA required minimum distribution
Yes.
age did bump up in 2024. It did go up and it's going to go up again. And I don't have those ages for you off the top of my head, but they did bump it back from 72, I think, to 73. If you have questions on that, though, I will look it up and email me about that. And the required minimum distribution, like I said, for an employer plan is changing. If you have Roth money in there, you're not required to take from the Roth portion. But that will change. Now, making contributions to a Roth IRA, though, just keep in mind that there are modified adjusted gross income levels as to whether or not you qualify. So, I just want to mention that because not everybody is aware of that. So if you make too much money, you might not be able to contribute directly to a Roth. But at this time, you can still contribute to a Roth as long as you have earned income and you don't earn too much money.
Thank you.
Seema, did you have a question for me?
No, I don't have a question, but since one of my favorite people is talking, Larissa, I had to butt in. So I don't know if most of the people here already have a self-directed IRA, but obviously one thing I've learned that it's not enough to just get that self-directed IRA. You have to invest it. And in the Tampa, Sarasota area, there are a lot of in-person meetings, and some of them are on Zoom too. And if anybody is looking to invest their money, it'd be worth finding out about them and then, going on those either going in person to those meetings or going on Zoom so you can put that money to use. And Advanta too has every other week, I think, on a Friday.
It's once a month right now. That's right, Seema. I forgot to mention that. We have our own networking event and everybody is welcome. You don't have to be a client to join. The next one is January 26th. So we try to do it the last Friday of every month. And you can find that on our calendar too. We call it Pitch, Promote, and Prosper. But that's just a good, meeting of the minds type of place where everybody has the opportunity to talk about what they're looking for or what they have. So it's a pitch meeting for whatever you might be looking for. And everybody has about a minute and a half to talk. And, that's a good point, Seema, because when we talk about a self-directed IRA, I mentioned it a few times, you have to put it to work or it's going to sit in cash. It's not going to earn. And so if you're ready to self-direct and find your investment, then that's the time to get involved.
Yeah, because I have found through that Friday thing, I found a couple of people to invest with. And then, of course, all the weekly webinars that they have, because I think a chunk of my investments are through people who were giving a webinar on Advanta, and they were from like all over the country. And then I contacted them, oil and gas, ATM, bunch of family offices. These are all people who were talking on Advanta, because I really did not know anybody 3 years ago. And so through them, then I started investing. But I did want to mention that just opening the account isn't enough. You have to work at investing that money, as I am doing. I was writing checks to Advanta when I found out Larissa was talking. So
thank you, Seema.
Yeah.
Hey, Larissa, for a newer investor or that wanted to start their IRA, can you just talk about maybe how you could wholesale a deal by just putting the EMD down and then getting a small amount of money in, or wrapping, JVing with people? Because I think a lot of people are just they think you have to have a lot of money to start it, and they can't see how you could use $500 or $1,000 or a couple thousand just to get that started, and how much you could grow that very quickly.
Yeah, yep. So we actually have webinars on our website for investing in with small amounts. So I think that's important because, like I said, we're talking about making your annual contribution right now. And so what can you do with that annual contribution? But we have people do private lending deals with $3,000 or $4,000. I've seen people lend that, $2,000 that they put into an education savings account for an earnest money deposit. And so there's ways to get involved into deals where you don't need a ton of money. Of course, cryptocurrency is something we see a lot of, and precious metals, where you don't need a ton of money to get involved. Another one, tax liens. When we get to tax lien season at Advanta, it gets very busy because people are making their deposits with the counties that they want to invest in. And so you have time right now, if you're in Florida, in the Tampa Bay area, because tax lien season is not until May. But find out about your local counties, find out about tax lien investing, find out about partnering with other people so that if you're just starting with a smaller amount, it doesn't mean you can't self-direct it. Me personally, I just did a loan that was with a smaller amount. And so it's definitely possible. Sometimes those strategies I do feel like are considered a little advanced, but it's important there then that you're just educating yourself very simply. So something that we see people use a little bit of money for is a real estate option. So if you find out that somebody is in need of some cash, maybe $5,000 or $10,000 for some repair on their home or finishing up a rehab, whatever it might be, and you have the ability to give them that money, you might offer them that money and say, hey, if this is a rental property and you don't plan on selling it, so you're not going to pay me back, immediately, then instead of borrowing the money, why don't I give you this money and you give me the option to buy your property at some point in the future for a fixed amount, and I can either basically implement that option and buy the property or sell the option if your IRA doesn't have the money to buy the property at some profit in the future. So you might agree, like I might say, okay, well, I'm going to, Sharon needs $10,000 to do the roof at her rental property, and she doesn't want to come out of pocket for that, but we agree that I'm going to give her that $10,000. She's going to give me an option to buy that property 10 years from now. And either I'm going to buy that property for a fixed amount that we agree upon today, or maybe she agrees that she'll sell that property and I'll get a portion of the upside, or we'll agree that I have the option to assign that option contract to somebody else for some amount, or she can buy me out of that option for some amount in the future. And so there's a lot of different ways to get involved. Another one was the wrap loan. So what does that look like? That's where there might be an underlying mortgage for a certain amount. Somebody might need just a little bit more money to get a project done or repair a roof or whatever it might be. So I might come in and say, well, I know you just need $5,000 to do that plumbing repair. So I'm going to wrap your first mortgage and get the difference in the interest rate paid to my IRA account. And then at the time that you can pay that loan off, that's it. There might be another scenario where you do a wrap where somebody needs $45,000 and you have 5,000 and another IRA has 40,000 unrelated to you, and they go in first position, you go in second position, and you're wrapping that loan again for the difference in the interest rate and the upside. So again, some of these strategies I might consider maybe a little more advanced, but there's lots of opportunities to learn. There's actually a class coming up in the Tampa Bay area on options. If you guys know Bill Cook, he's going to be teaching that class. And so if you haven't heard of options, you haven't had an opportunity to see how they work, that'll be an opportunity for you. And actually, we're doing a webinar on that next week where Bill is going to preview that class for us. And, I know a lot of great investors that do education on wrap loans. I've heard people talk on subject to. So there's a lot of opportunity to learn about those deals where you don't need a ton of money to make them work.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
So Jane or Sharon, can you talk about some of the things that we have for that's in the Virtual Real Estate Academy on some of those topics that she was just talking about?
Yeah, we actually do. There are some topics that are, Nicole has a lot of good ones on there with different modules with the Virtual REI Academy. There's other
Subject to creative financing options,
different types of options.
using your IRA. I mean, we have over 45 courses, I think, on there. It's kind of on demand, like Netflix, but just on demand. Just listen to them at your pace. And so I put the website in the comments.
Yeah, we do have an advanced strategy section that goes into depth on very creative ways to finance. with little to no money down or just different creative structures. And I did several different wrap loans too to increase some of my lower accounts, smaller accounts. And it's a good point with the I didn't realize the Coverdell is like 2,000 a year. So you really need to be creative to bring that amount up for the children.
Mhm.
You have anything else? Does anybody else have any other questions at all? You have the expert on here and she's knows this inside and out, and she's very smart. As you can see, she's smart with all the investment strategies as well too.
Oh, thank you.
I think it's helpful when people actually do what they're teaching about. A lot of times people teach, but they don't actually do it. So you're an investor as well, so you can get the best use of IRAs and how to use them.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, the first time that I did my own loan, I was so nervous, even though I had helped people so many times do theirs through their IRA when I got all the paperwork and I had to read and approve everything. It was very nerve-wracking, but as they say, like you have to just get through one so that you can do two. And I think that's very true. And so when I started doing the private lending, just walking through the process for myself was a much different experience than helping somebody else do it.
Yeah, now you've probably done hundreds and it's easy peasy, right?
Not hundreds, but it's much easier now. That's true.
Larissa also facilitates one of the Zoom meetings in which this is what they do all day long, wraps and things like that on Thursdays in St. Pete's. And so she has seen this in action for years. And that makes a big difference. And she knows all those people with whom she is, doing business. And, because I used to see her, put the amount of money, little bit of amount of money to invest, but and she only wanted to invest it with those local people. Think Pete Fortunato, everybody knows him. So that made a big difference because she is running the meeting, so to speak, and she's seeing it in action.
Yes, that's true. And I think this of so many of the groups that I attend, and it seems like this group is the same. It is so great to go to a group where you feel like you can ask questions, find out what other people are doing around you, and how does that strategy work? How might you be able to fit that into your own life? And I think that's super important. And just the networking that you get out of these groups it's very important.
Absolutely. Again, thank you so much for coming on our call, and you're such a wealth of information, and it gives a lot of content for the people who might have an account to be able to expand upon it, and then the ones that don't have IRA accounts yet and they're thinking about getting one. So, reach out to Larissa if you have any questions or want to open an account. She's great and she's very knowledgeable.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You have any?
Wow, this is a quiet group.
I know.
Hey, I do
Jeez.
have a question.
Hi, Anita.
Hi. Anyways, this is a little strange question, but and I'm pretty sure there's no way to do this, but I do a lot of investing through my self-directed IRA, and I'm in an investment group where opportunities come up from foreign investments, for example, from Australia. And I have to pass on that because you would have to pay tax there. But they say, oh, don't worry, you're not going to get double taxed, because they have an agreement with the government here. But we're not paying tax on it. So as far as I can see, there's no way to get around anything like that, is there?
That is a great question, Anita. I do have clients invest overseas. I actually did a webinar about it last year, but I do defer to your accountant on those types of questions. And even when it comes to things like investment paperwork or what the country might require. So for example, I have clients invested in land in Costa Rica, but because Costa Rica requires like the equivalent of an LLC formed in their country prior to investments. Those are things that we know just based on helping clients with transactions, but those are not things that we do our due diligence on. So it's going to be important to get involved with an accountant that can help you with foreign investments.
Yeah, I always just assumed that there wasn't any way to do it. So
Yeah, no,
Then
you
IRA.
still, you can do it, but definitely understand the taxation before you make that investment.
Yeah.
And it's possible because of, certain entities or whatever, you might still get some sort of deferment or something like that on the taxes. But I definitely am not the person to ask about that. But there are definitely tax professionals that can help you.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great question, Anita. Anybody else have any more? Nicole, did you get all yours answered? I know you had quite a few of them. I don't know if we'll
I
still-
think we're good for right now, but thank you very much.
Perfect.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Awesome.
All right, guys, cool. Thanks, Larissa. Appreciate it. I know it was challenging because I sent you the wrong link.
That's okay.
Thanks for
When the email
well,
came through important, I was like, oh, I probably have the wrong link here, so that's no
and
problem
then
at
I'm texting Seema like to give me her cell phone, and she's saying not to call you, and I'm like, but I got to. so it all worked out. Okay, we'll call it an early night. We should go till 8:30, but we'll call it an early night, and we'll see everybody next week, 6:30 for multifamily, and then 7:30 for us. I think we're I'm not sure what Nicole, what you guys are doing next week, but we're gonna talk a little bit about brand, building your brand next week. So that's what our topic is, and
Yeah,
we'll see everybody next week.
James is doing next week. I'm on my way out of the country, so
Oh,
for a
that's
couple
right.
weeks.
Oh, that's right, that's right. So all right, well, safe travels, and I guess we'll see everybody next week. Thanks again. Thanks, Larissa, for being on.